The hull tore open 4 decks below me, and I felt the pressure drop before the alarm even finished its first note. My name is Vex. I am Threnn, and I have not shown my bare face to another living being in 11 years. Not because I am ashamed of it, because my skin does something no other species in this galaxy has to live with, and the last time I forgot that, someone I loved paid for it with their own flesh. I was 3 steps into the machine bay when the emergency lights switched from white to red, and Owen Bramwell's voice cracked through my helmet calm, tight and fast in a way I had never heard from him before. Vex, we've got a breach on Deck 6, hull integrity failing. I need hands down here now. I did not answer, I ran. The station I live on floats at the edge of what used to be contested space, a patchwork of human and alien crews doing the slow, dangerous work of pulling old warships apart for parts nobody wants to admit are still worth fighting over. I have worked salvage here for 6 years. I have never once removed my armor while another soul could see me do it. The crew calls me the suit. They think it is because I like the plating, the weight, the quiet hum of the servos in my arms. They do not know that underneath this armor is a body that turns fear and love and grief into something that can burn through steel. I reached Deck 6 with my boots slamming against the grating, and what I found was worse than the alarm had promised. A support strut, thick as a man's torso, had come loose from a damaged bulkhead during a routine cargo shift, and it had come down across a crewman's leg, pinning him against a coolant line that was already hissing white vapor into the corridor. The air stank of scorched metal and leaking gas, and somewhere behind me another warning chime was counting down to a full pressure failure. The man pinned under the strut was Owen. He was not supposed to be down here. He was the station's engineer, not a salvage hand, but he had a habit of showing up wherever trouble started, because that was simply who he was. He looked up at me through the mist, his face pale, one hand pressed flat against the deck to keep himself from sliding toward the widening crack in the hull plating. "Don't just stand there," he said, and even in pain, there was a dry edge to his voice, like he was daring me to hesitate. "Get this thing off me before the whole corridor decides to become a window." I moved without thinking, which is the most dangerous thing a Threnn can do. My species does not carry weapons the way most warrior races do. We do not need them. When a Threnn feels something powerful enough, our skin produces a resin, thick and searing, strong enough to melt through hull plating in seconds. In war, this made us feared. In peace, it made us something else entirely, something people learn to keep their distance from, because the same resin that can save your life in a fight can also burn the hand of the person standing beside you if your control slips at the wrong moment. I wear this armor because it seals that resin in. It gives me a barrier between what I feel and what I might do to the people I care about. For 11 years, it has been the only thing standing between me and becoming the reason someone I love never trusts touch again. I grabbed the strut with both armored hands and hauled upward, servos screaming, sparks jumping from the shoulder joint where shrapnel from an earlier repair job had never quite been cleared out. The metal groaned, lifted an inch, then stopped, jammed against a twisted support brace I could not see from this angle. "It's caught," I said, my voice flat through the vocoder. "I need another few seconds." "We don't have a few seconds," Owen said, and he was right, because the crack in the hull chose that exact moment to widen with a sound like a giant exhaling, and the coolant line beside his head snapped free and began whipping loose, spraying freezing vapor across both of us. The armor's servo motor in my left arm seized. I felt it lock through my whole shoulder, a dead weight where a moment ago there had been strength, and the strut dropped half an inch back onto Owen's leg. He made a sound he tried to swallow, and something in my chest twisted so hard and so fast that I felt heat rush up through my collarbone before I could stop it. I had a choice in that half second, and I made it without any time to weigh what it would cost. I tore the glove from my right hand and pressed my bare palm flat against the underside of the strut, and I lifted with everything my body had left, servos and muscle, and whatever else a person has when there is no other option. The strut groaned, shifted, and came free just enough for two of the other salvage crew, a woman named Priya and a young man named Callum, to haul Owen backward out from underneath it. The strut crashed down where he had been lying a heartbeat earlier. I stood there in the vapor and the flashing red light, my bare hand pressed against cooling metal, and I felt the resin building under my skin the way it always does when fear and something far more dangerous than fear collide at once. It rose in me like heat behind a closed door, and for one terrible, honest second, I did not know if I could hold it back. I held it. It cost me something to hold it, a kind of pressure behind my eyes and along every nerve in my arm, but I held it, and the resin never broke the surface of my palm. When I finally pulled my hand back and looked at it, the skin was raw and blistered pale from the effort, but it had not burned through anything. It had not burned through anyone. Owen was breathing hard against the bulkhead, his leg bent at a wrong angle but alive, whole, safe. He looked up at me, and his eyes went straight to my exposed hand, not my helmet, not the armor, not the vapor still curling around us both. "You're hurt," he said. "It isn't blood," I told him, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. "It's what I am. It's what I could have done to you if I hadn't held it back in time." "But you held it." "I might not always." He tried to laugh, though it came out closer to a wince. "I was a combat medic for 9 years before I ever set foot on this station, Vex. I have held people together with these hands while they came apart underneath them. I know exactly what it costs to hold on to someone when it's dangerous to do it. I chose that every single time. You're not telling me anything new." Priya and Callum got him onto a stretcher and moved him toward the medical bay, while emergency crews sealed the breach behind us, and I stood in the corridor a long moment after they had gone, staring at my own bare hand as if I had never truly looked at it before. I did not go to the medical bay that night. I told myself it was because there was cleanup to oversee, structural reports to file. 100 small duties that gave me a reason not to walk through those doors and see him again with my face still hidden and my hands still gloved. The truth was simpler and harder to admit. I was afraid of what I might say to him if I let myself get close enough to say anything at all. 3 days passed before I found him on the observation deck, leaning on a crutch, his splinted leg held stiff at an awkward angle, staring out at the slow wheel of stars beyond the viewport. He must have heard my boots on the deck plating, because he did not turn around right away, and when he finally did, there was no surprise in his face at all, only a kind of patient waiting, like he had known I would come eventually. "You've been avoiding me," he said. "I have been busy." "You've been avoiding me," he said again, gently this time, without any heat in it. "That's fine. I understand why. I just want you to know it isn't going to work because I'm not going anywhere, and eventually you're going to have to talk to me instead of the corridor behind me." I stood there in full armor, helmet sealed, exactly as I had stood in front of 100 other people over the past 11 years, and something about the way he looked at me made all of that distance feel suddenly very small and very foolish. "You don't understand what I am," I said. "What happened 3 days ago, that wasn't the worst of it. That was me holding back. There was a time I didn't hold back." He was quiet for a moment, watching me, and then he said, "Tell me." I had never told anyone on this station the full truth, not even the crew I had worked beside for 6 years. But something about the calm way he waited, without pushing, without flinching, made the words come easier than I expected. "Before I came here, I served in the war," I said. "My unit lost a ship, and in the chaos of getting the survivors out, one of my closest companions grabbed my arm to steady herself on a collapsing gangway. I was terrified. My skin does what it does when I am terrified, and I burned her before I even understood what was happening. She survived. She was never quite the same afterward, and neither was I. I built a wall out of plating and protocol after that, because a wall cannot hurt anyone by accident. A wall just stands there, and everyone stays safe on the other side of it. Except you, Owen said quietly. Except me, I admitted, and it was the first time in 11 years I had said those two words out loud to another person. He shifted his weight on the crutch, wincing slightly, and looked at me with an expression I had not seen aimed at myself in longer than I could remember. It was not pity. It was not fear. It was something steadier than either of those things. I'm not asking you to promise me nothing will ever go wrong, he said. Nobody gets that kind of promise from anyone, human or otherwise. I'm asking you to stop deciding for both of us that it will go wrong before you've even given either of us the chance to find out. I wanted to argue with him. I had 11 years of careful, practiced reasons ready to defend the wall I had built, reasons that had kept me safe and kept everyone around me safe for over a decade. But standing there, looking at him standing on a splinted leg because he had run toward danger instead of away from it, because he had reached for me instead of flinching from what I might do, I found that none of those reasons wanted to come out of my mouth. If I am wrong about this, I said instead, if I let myself feel too much and it goes wrong again, I could hurt you, truly hurt you, not a burn you shake off, something that stays. I know the risk, Owen said. I chose it the first day I worked beside you and you ran every diagnostic twice, once for the ship and once for yourself, and never once explained why because you didn't think anyone would understand. I understood. I've just been waiting for you to notice. There was a long silence between us then, filled only by the low hum of the station's ventilation and the distant murmur of the crew working somewhere below. I thought about the wall again, about 11 years spent behind plating so thick that even kindness had never truly touched me, and I thought about how tired I was of living inside something built to keep me safe from ever being close to anyone again. I reached up slowly and unsealed the clasps at my throat myself. It was the first time in 11 years I had done it in front of another person by choice. The helmet came away, and the recycled air of the station touched my face directly for the first time in longer than I wanted to count, cool and faintly metallic and entirely real. Owen did not move toward me. He stood exactly where he was, giving me the space to decide what came next, the way he had given me space every single day since the moment we first met. So I crossed the distance myself. I held out my bare hand, palms still faintly marked from 3 days earlier, and waited to see if he would take it. He looked at my hand for a moment, not with fear, but with something closer to understanding, and then he took it in his own without any hesitation at all. For one long breath, neither of us moved. I felt the old fear rise in me, the familiar tightening behind my ribs that always came before the resin, and I braced myself for the worst, the way I had braced myself every day since the accident that had taken my careless trust away from me. Nothing happened. My skin stayed skin. His hand stayed whole and warm in mine. There it is, he said quietly, and there was no triumph in his voice, only a kind of quiet relief, as if he had been certain of this all along and was simply glad to finally see it proven. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I have spent so long making sure I never had to find out. Neither of us knows how to do this perfectly, Owen said. Nobody does. We just figure it out as we go together, and if something ever does go wrong, we deal with it together too. That's the whole point. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. I looked down at our joined hands, at the ordinary, impossible fact of them, and felt something loosen in my chest that had been wound tight for 11 years, 3 months, and 28 days. It did not disappear all at once. Old fears rarely do, but for the first time since the accident that had taught me to hide behind steel and silence, I let myself believe that the fear did not have to win. Word of what happened on Deck 6 spread quickly through the station, the way stories always do in a place where everyone lives close enough to hear each other breathe. Some of the crew looked at me differently after that, not with less respect, but with something gentler, as though they had always suspected there was a person underneath the armor and were quietly glad to finally see her. Priya found me in the mess hall a few days later, setting a tray down across from mine without asking permission, which was very much her way. "You know," she said, "we always figured you just liked the armor. Thought maybe you were self-conscious about a scar or something." "Something like that," I said. "For what it's worth," she added, "nobody here was ever going to think less of you for taking it off. We just needed you to trust us enough to try." I did not have an answer for that right away, but I found that I did not need one, because for the first time in a long while, the silence between us felt comfortable instead of guarded. Owen's leg healed slowly over the following weeks, and I found myself spending more time beside him than the work strictly required, first checking on his recovery, then simply because I wanted to. We talked about small things mostly, the kind of things people talk about when they are learning each other properly for the first time. He told me about growing up on a farming colony far from any war, about deciding to become a medic because he had once watched someone die for lack of a single steady hand, and about how he had ended up on the station chasing a quieter kind of purpose after the fighting ended. I told him about my mother's, about the training every young Threnn goes through to learn control before we are ever allowed near anyone we love, and slowly, carefully, about the friend I had hurt, and how she had eventually forgiven me even when I had not yet learned to forgive myself. I still wear the armor most days. Old habits do not vanish simply because one fear has been faced down, but I no longer wear it because I believe it is the only thing keeping the people around me safe. I wear it because it is practical, because salvage work is dangerous regardless of what species you are, and because now, when I choose to take it off, that choice means something it never meant before. There is a particular kind of freedom in learning that the thing you feared most about yourself does not have to define every single day of your life. I spent 11 years convinced that the only way to protect the people I loved was to make certain I never got close enough to love them at all. It took one stubborn, steady human, unwilling to be frightened away by a truth most people would have run from, to show me that protecting someone and staying distant from them are not always the same thing. Some nights when the station is quiet and the stars outside the viewport turn slowly the way they always have, Owen and I sit together on the observation deck, my hand resting easily in his, and I think about how close I came to spending my whole life behind that armor, certain that hiding was the only kindness I had left to offer anyone. I was wrong about that. I am glad, more than I can properly say, that someone cared enough to prove it.